What do you think is the success of the project? Many people respond to the success of the project in the following ways. The project has achieved its goal. It did not exceed budget. The project finished on time. The developer got a good quality. Project members have learned a lot and know-hows have accumulated in the company. But all of this are a one-sided project success criterion on the project's performer perspective, i.e. the supplier. There is one important thing here. Customer satisfaction is missing. So let's think about what happens when the project is done to add value to the customer's business and achieve the customer's important goals. While it may be a successful project from the customer's perspective, in order to achieve this, the supplier accepts a continual change request from the customer, and if the cost and schedule are exceeded, the supplier may consider that the project was a failure. But the real success of the project is not the zero-sum game between the customer and the supplier, but drive the success that both parties can win-win. As a result, the success of the project that is satisfied by both customer and supplier can be achieved by effective requirements management. The requirements management process is already a part of processes that must be met to comply with global quality improvement models and standards, such as CMMI and ISO. Due to intense competition, the development cycle of products is being shortened in today's world, which requires high technology and complex systems. And as it is changing toward the development environment of outsourcing by globalization and distributed development, requirements management becomes increasingly difficult. According to McKinsey Research, a multinational consulting firm, 52.7% of IT and infrastructure industry failure factors are related to requirement management, and 73.4 to 82.6% of total cost of the project is rework cost due to failure in requirement management. According to Standish Group's 2003 data, after analysis of more than 40,000 large-scale IT projects, only 35% of the projects were found to succeed, and more than 50% of the critical failures were due to poor requirements management and other related activities. Most schedule overruns are due to reworking in the later phase of the life cycle, and the cost of correcting an error is also known to be up to 200 times against which the cost of the requirement analysis phase is 1. On the other hand, an analysis of the U.S. Department of Defense project by the Defense Acquisition University found that 70% of the total life cycle cost was determined at the requirements analysis stage. So what's wrong with the process mechanism? Let's look at what kind of problems exist in the enterprise from the perspectives of process, people, and technology, which are quality factors of software. First, from a process perspective, there are problems such as insufficient corporate policies and regulations on requirements management, lack of requirements definition and change management processes, lack of agile requirements management, and lack of continuous and comprehensive improvement efforts on requirement management. That is, there is a lack of willingness of the enterprise to recognize and accept the needs of the requirements management, and the compliance regulations for the requirements management process are weak or not followed. In addition, requirements definition and change management processes are inadequate, and so it is difficult to achieve consistency and traceability through repeated execution of requirements management. We do not meet the current development environment requirements, which are changed from time to time by performing requirements management through existing waterfall method. And it solves the problems of requirements management temporarily, and thus the root cause of the problem is repeated. Next, from a people perspective, there are problems with unnecessary requirement management additional costs, limited requirement management personnel, and lack of specialists, and ineffective requirement management training. The lack of traceability between requirements in the system software development lifecycle leads that unnecessary extra effort is required to analyze the impact of the system by requirement changes. In addition, there is an absolute shortage of requirements management human resources or efforts, and lack of professionals in the enterprise leads shortage of requirements management expertise. And there is not enough internal training program on requirements management, and it is not effective compared with the cost of educational investment because of the education contents which do not fully consider development reality. Lastly, from the technical perspective, there are problems such as ineffective use or non-introduction of requirement management tools, lack of requirements extraction definition method or technique application, and lack of mid- and long-term technical improvement strategy roadmap. In other words, requirement management is inefficient because of the lack of automation tools or improper use and lack of templates. In addition, as the application of requirements extraction techniques and competences in defining requirements are insufficient, these make difficult to document the requirements properly. And the lack of a mid- and long-term vision and strategies of improving technologies by introducing technologies spontaneously to solve short-term problems makes the strategic direction of improvement unclear. This time I will explain the problems caused by lack of requirements management in a Korean company and how they overcame and got improved. The challenge for a business unit in the company was to manage effective requirements across multiple teams. The problems with the business unit was that it was difficult to collaborate because systematic requirements management was not good. It was inconvenient to communicate about requirements, and it was difficult to share and keep track of the situation because it was managed based on personal files. So the following improvement activities were executed. They defined a simple workflow for rapid response and collaboration. In addition, they have built a simple and convenient agile requirements management system based on a single repository, and monitor the schedule and status of the requirements through the dashboard. Through these improvement activities, this business unit has improved communication and collaboration among teams, and they have been able to improve productivity by quick response through requirement progress monitoring. Now I will explain about requirements management scope and process. The development lifecycle of systems software engineering is generally described the V model as the figure on the screen. The V model creates a wide variety of work products at each stage of development. Some of the work products may exist independently, but most of them are closely related. In other words, the work product created at a development phase is used as the input in created work product for the next phase. For example, you will create system or product level system requirements documents based on top-level requirements gathered by a product planning or marketing team. The system requirements document must reflect all the requirements gathered from marketing, plus the internal and external standards to develop the product, constraints, and external environmental conditions. Thus, the child document must include all the requirements mentioned in the parent document. For example, The system requirements document created by the system development team must be verified to reflect all of the marketing requirements documents collected by the marketing team. The requirements management process is applied from the beginning of the software lifecycle, and the baseline is first established after understanding and reviewing new requirements. And through change management, you control the changes to requirements through the following process. Firstly, requirement changes are raised. The user or developer raises requirements such as inconveniences or new developments requests during the development and operation of the system. Secondly, changes to requirement are accepted. The change request received from the user developer are transitioned to the responsible person assigned to review the requirement. Third, it reviews your requirement changes. It determines whether the data is relevant to the requested requirements and whether it checks to reflect the writing standards, components, and principles. If it cannot be reflected, it will be sent back to the person who raised the requirement together with the reasons for the reject, so that the result can be known. Fourth, it analyzes the impact. Based on the requested details, it is necessary to determine the impact of new developments and changes and finalize the impact analysis. Fifth, it is the change agreement and baseline activity. It will convene the relevant personnel to share their opinions, decide on the type of implementation through consultation with the staff, and then baseline them. Sixth, it is the implementation activities. Based on the result of the impact analysis, it will establish the implementation plan after meeting with the business area and related personnel and carry out the implementation activities such as modification, development, and testing. Finally, it is the review of changed contents. This is the activity that the person in charge of the agreement confirms the changed contents. Next, let's look at 6 principles for understanding and agreeing requirements. The first principle is that you should avoid missing the most cautious requirement in requirements development. Missing here means exclusion from the scope of development. Normally, they sit quietly on the surface of the water and come to the surface of the water later in the project. In particular, non-functional requirements such as quality characteristics or interfaces, data transitions, constraints, and business rules other than business functional requirements frequently occur. Why does this missing occur? That's because there's a problem with requirements gathering. Requirements gathering defines the problem to be solved, usually a process that requires human interaction. That's why communication skills are important to building an IT system. Insufficient and missing requirements need to be gathered through various requirements development activities, such as prototyping in advance or creating test cases. The second principle is to accurately identify your audience. To get a clear consensus on requirements, you need to pinpoint the user levels to provide and determine the requirements. In fact, the project has agreed on users and their requirements. However, there is a case of which changes are completely happened in the later phases of project lifecycle. This attributes to the problems with the customer's change request the requirements, but it is also the responsibility of the project team that deals with the customer. That is, it is not able to identify the decision makers on the requirements clearly, especially those who are key persons. The third principle is to drive customer engagement. Requirements must include what the customer expects, wants, and needs, even if the customer does not specify them. It is not simply the products and services that customers buy from companies. The products and services provide the efficiency and value. Here, efficiency and value can be divided into customer wants and customer needs. Customers sometimes do not understand the importance of collecting requirements and trying to verify their quality. The project team also does not emphasize customer engagement because it is not fun to collaborate with customers and assume that they already know their needs. But a project with insufficient customer engagement will delay the project because of adding requirements late. It is therefore important to remember that there is no better success factor than direct collaboration between the customer and the project team at every stage of the project. The fourth principle for understanding and agreeing requirements is that the visibility of requirements must be increased. The biggest challenge in software development is the invisibility that software is not visible. Architecture can see the rise of building construction, but it is difficult to figure out how far the software has progressed. If customer requirements are ambiguous and complex, then you need to understand them through visible activities. Some of the most popular activities in companies include demo, draft, POC, benchmarking, and prototyping. The fifth principle should assign priority. It is difficult to handle everything in the same amount of time and weight in a project with tight deadlines. Since everything we do always has priorities, we need to prioritize the collected requirements and always execute with these priorities in mind. The last, sixth principle is that requirements review and approval activities must be carried out. Reviewing the requirements means having enough conversations and fixing any errors in misunderstood requirements. If the requirements are thoroughly reviewed and clearly documented, then the project team and customers sign together. Surprisingly, there are many customers who are allergic to the signatures. If there is enough consensus, there is no reason to object the approval. Customer approval activities must be carried out from the beginning of the project so that the project can be running smoothly throughout the life cycle. Now let's discuss the requirements traceability types. There are various relationships between requirements or between requirements and system design, and each requirement has its reasons for being proposed. If the requirements are changed, you should be able to identify the relevant requirements that are affected. The following is a description of requirement traceability types. The first is a source traceability information. It is the information about the requirements, the people who proposed it, and the reason for the suggestion. If you need a change in your requirements, it is the information you need to find a contact person and consult about the change. The second is a requirement traceability information. It is the information on requirements related to specific requirements. If the requirements are changed, it is the information required to identify other affected requirements and extent to which they are affected. The third is a design traceability information. It is the information about the design that corresponds to specific requirement. It is the information required to identify affected system designs and implementations if requirements are changed. Requirements traceability management is effective when it is managed by individual requirement unit. We can summarize the values that can be gained when tracking with individual requirements units within all document artifacts that require traceability. It reduces rework by avoiding omission of top-level requirements. Ensuring traceability increases the quality of individual requirements. It also makes it easier to analyze the impact of changes. Effective collaboration between various departments and vendors is possible. Ensuring traceability with test cases ensures test coverage, resulting in increased product quality. Ensure consistency among work products through various change management activities. Finally, productivity is increased due to the reduced miscommunication caused by changes.